basically. Look, it started from China, whether it was intentional or unintentional. That's not beside the point. I don't think it was intentional, but I think that when things like this happen, people do take advantage of opportunity. And you got to be real careful who gets the better hand when they're taking advantage of opportunity. It's just, it's new ground. It's weird for people. They know where it came from. They have isolated that this thing did come from this market in Wuhan. Mm-hmm. They know. It's just, it's the way things like this can play out. If there's a bunch of these, is almost just like someone starting a conspiracy. It's not, it doesn't have to be done. Like it just actually naturally exists. And the same people that would benefit from a conspiracy or who would engage in a conspiracy to defraud people or fuck people over in the first place, they're the ones who are going to jump in and take advantage of it the quickest. That's what's so scary about it. Totalitarian ideas thrive when people are scared. They want someone to take over the reins. They want someone to take over. We're going to block the streets. No more travel. We're going to block this. You can't go to work. You can't block. Then you're going to be poor and broke and scared. I'm not saying that that's what they're doing. But what I am saying is if you wanted to do something to really take over a civilization, it would be this way. That's how you would do it. You would do it with diseases. I'm not saying they're doing that. I don't think they are. I think this is just a horrible natural disaster. I want to be really clear on that. But we might come out of this different than we went in. That's real. There's tanks driving down the road in California. Tanks. And they're like, oh, they're just getting supplies or something. Like, what do you... There's tanks rolling through New York City. My friend John Joseph.
Wow.
He sent me a video from his phone of tanks rolling down New York City. Like armed Humvees and tanks.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, freaky, like military vehicles in camo. Like, where are you hiding? You're in New York City. What are you hiding from? What kind of camo is that? Is it weird that they, even when they use them in cities, they camo them up?
Yeah.
It seems so rude.
It is.
It's like to let you know. They might hide in the bushes too, bitch. But they drive through the cities to lock everybody down.
If they had those murdered out matte black paint jobs instead, it would be a little bit more intimidating maybe.
Fuck yeah.
Little pieces of pizza slices and stuff.
Well, it's at least with camo, if you have your car is all camoed up and you're not in the military, you know, they're going to have an eye on you anyway. Like, what are you doing? Right?
Unless you're in, like, West Virginia.
Dudes who have, like, camoed up H1s, Hummers, and they're driving those real military-style Hummer around, like, please check that guy's house. You know, please read his Facebook. Please. You just got to give up a microchip. They just put a microchip in your hand, and you're fine. And it's also, it doubles as a corona tester, so you make sure that you never get mistaken for someone with corona. They just have to scan you. Hey, you going into this bathroom? Can I have your hand, please? Womp. Up, green. Go ahead and urinate with peace and harmony. Go ahead.
Or putting those UV lights everywhere.
Am I freaking out? I mean, really, I'm trying not to sound like a conspiracy nut because I'm not accusing anyone of creating a conspiracy. But what I am saying is if I was a conspiracy nut or if I was a country that was conspiring to take over the world, this is not a bad way to do it. I don't think that's happening right now. I want to be real clear. But it's kind of the same result that we're experiencing right now, where everyone's being forced to shut down with who knows what consequences. But it's also the right thing to do. So we're all like, whoa, how do you know, it's another one of those things about being a person where the right thing to do still feels crazy. Still feels like, all right, we're just going to sit around. Well, yeah, I guess that's what you have to do, you know? And it's kind of, in one way, encouraging that so many people are willing to stay home. And people aren't rebelling. They're like, fuck you, this is my country. I'm going to go to work. I'll take a chance. Everybody's going to get it anyway. Fuck you. There's way less people doing that. And when you consider that the government is controlling 320 million people, pretty crazy. Almost everyone's complying with staying home. There's only a few essential businesses.
Yeah, we're going to have to, I think, really have spacesuits to leave the house and work.
God damn
it. And they're going to probably be like this metal plastic thing that could wash off really easy.
Yeah, they're all going to be padded. Dudes are going to put socks in their spacesuits. It's going to be a mess. Are you worried, Jamie?
Yeah,
I've never seen you this worried.
because I've everything you're sort of saying. Like I look into the future and sort of see where we're headed, and I don't really see much out there because I don't know where it is. But it's not anything good because there's nothing there. I don't see like going to the movies again. Seems like that's probably close to out. Movies were already dying anyway.
Yeah, they might not survive this.
They've already opened up the ability to like put those right into your house for $20. Perfect.
Way better.
Sweet. So when are movie theaters gonna open again? All right, what's next?
Yeah.
Concerts, sporting events.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just those are all the fun things we used to do. So like, fuck.
It's also once everything's in place where they can treat people effectively and they have the adequate number of ventilators, then are we going to go back to the way things were, or are we going to have new standards in place? I don't know. I don't know, man. They did an unprecedented thing. They locked down the entire country to save people's lives. Never happened before. We're in new territory. And you know it's dangerous when a moron like me is making sense. When I'm one of the people who's talking about something like this.
Try to find it. I just read yesterday. I don't know if someone shared this. Was F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote. I think this was a letter found from 1920 when he was living in France during the Spanish flu.
Ooh.
And like he was talking. I don't know who he was writing to. I'll try to find it right now. But he's talking about how they stocked up on a bunch of alcohol and people were being told almost like now, like you're told not to go anywhere, but some people don't believe it. I forget. He was talking about another writer friend of his who wasn't taking it seriously and like.
Whoa, so it was like real similar.
It sounded very similar to this.
Yeah. I guess that's how people always have been, right? Especially back then when it's real hard to get information. Imagine people are dying and everyone's just like, what's going on? You got to read the newspaper. Like, fuck.
Son of a bitch.
What happened?
It's fake.
Ha ha. How'd they get you?
I just saw that this note was going viral during the pandemic and a lot of people have been falling for it. And
Son of a bitch.
I guess I was one of them.
Well, what a good way to end.
Everything's fine. Everything's fake.
So it's when the surface, your surface reality becomes frustrating, that's the beginning of potentially finding the portal into the awakened state. But when your surface reality is relatively pleasant. By the way, it doesn't stay like that, but for the time being, let's say it's relatively pleasant. You're not really motivated into finding the deeper essence of who you are, because why not let's fly to Paris. We'll have a great meal there. Where you feel a little bit uncomfortable and discontent. Okay, let's go there. Let's do this. Let's try this. More sensory experience. You can buy any sensory experience. And then after a while you'll find being in your comfort zone after a while becomes your discomfort zone. And then finally you've made it. And then finally, there's a possibility of awakening. And so, this is the challenges that we encounter in life. Many people have an attitude of resentment or a feeling that there's something very wrong with the world, or there's something very wrong with my life when they're being challenged by difficult situations, difficult people, loss of some kind. Did I mention difficult people? Oh, yes. You may find a lot of your suffering unhappiness, strangely enough, comes from other people. They are so difficult. And often the very people that were supposed to make you happy, suddenly they don't fulfill their purpose anymore and they make you unhappy. It's called the divorce court. And there's an implied belief that this shouldn't be happening. Life should unfold beautifully without all that stuff going wrong. And to some extent, yes. To some extent, especially as you live more consciously and no longer totally in the grip of ego, you're beginning to awaken, there's an awareness, you no longer create unnecessary suffering in your mind through reactivity, you're able to drop the unnecessary baggage of creating narratives and creating your own suffering through your narratives, you let go of that, so it's a huge chunks of suffering begin to fall away. But challenges still come. Even then, even then, it doesn't mean everything will now go totally as expected and as it should. There's still loss happening from time. You still come across difficult people. Why is that? I don't want any more difficult. Yeah, but they're everywhere. As the famous French philosopher said, hell is other people. He looked very unhappy, by the way. Well, the only photo I ever saw of him, he looked unhappy, so I don't know. Jean-Paul Sartre. It's true, other people are difficult. So your life improves immeasurably as you become more conscious, but it will still challenge you. And it won't mean you will never experience loss again. It doesn't mean things may not go wrong still occasionally, not perhaps as drastically as before. You don't create your own mayhem and chaos anymore. But challenges, yes, different kinds of challenges come. And if you no longer complain that a challenge shouldn't exist, difficulties shouldn't exist, obstacles shouldn't exist, things should not be cancelled, they shouldn't go wrong. If you drop that expectation, then it's actually fine. But be careful that if you still have an unspoken assumption that there's something wrong when challenges happen, that would draw you back into unhappiness. There's nothing wrong when challenges happen. We grow through them. And if you hadn't had yours, you wouldn't be here. If I hadn't had mine, I wouldn't be here, so we wouldn't be here. We would not be here without it. And so retrospectively, we can actually be grateful for the suffering that we've had, retrospectively. The question is, the challenges of life, when they come, do we transform them into unhappiness, or are we able to just face them and then go with them and do whatever action is possible or necessary, or totally accept that at this moment, this is how it is. So when you live more consciously, you no longer convert the difficulties of life, the inevitable difficulties and challenges of life, you no longer convert them into unhappiness, which means they don't contribute anymore to your unhappy person identity. You're no longer becoming a more unhappy person. You'll be surprised how many people's main sense of identity in this world is unhappiness. And they're just looking for the next thing to be unhappy about. And they always find something, or to complain about, to be angry about. There's an expression that then you become a grievance looking for a cause. And of course, you always find the causes. So, important thing then to realize that if, I'm sure there are some of you who have carried the burden of a very unhappy self for many years, and perhaps you're just beginning to step out of it, you're just perhaps beginning to transcend it, and there are still millions in this world who carry the burden of an unhappy narrative in their minds, unhappy self. And that means, you think about then my life. Why did it come to this? Why didn't my expectations that I had when I was 20, why didn't they work out? Why did my marriage collapse? Why did I lose that job? Why did I succeed and made millions and then lost them? Why? Why did I work for nothing for 15 years and then the whole thing that I built up collapsed? Why? So dreadful, dreadful. All this begins to dissolve because you realize you're unconsciously creating suffering and strengthening the egoic personality through that. And then my life then is just memories. And you begin to realize, as I sometimes put it, or people find it a little weird, when I say, my life isn't a correct way of putting it, because you don't have a life. You don't have a life. Because if you have a life, there's you and life. How can you be separate from life? So, if you don't have a life, one could even say you can't even lose your life. You can only lose something that you have, but you are life, you don't have a life. I am life and consciousness are synonymous. It doesn't mean that every form of life is conscious, but every form of life is, the way I see it, is matter, the table, a rock, mineral. It's like frozen consciousness. Plant life is like liquid consciousness. It's an analogy. And the mind and thinking, and beyond that, consciousness itself is like vapor, mist, it rises. This is a water analogy. All life is manifestation of the one underlying life or consciousness in manifold forms. So you are that. I am life is a wonderful realization. I am consciousness. I don't have a life. Yes, I have a history, but the history is not my life. It's stuff. It's stuff in the mind. It's memories. And all these things are wonderful that they happen to you because they have brought about your awakening. They all make sense if you now look back on all the things that happened, including, and not only including, but especially the so-called bad things. They brought you to this point. They pushed you into awakening.